Good morning, and welcome to another episode of Drive-In Movies, the podcast where I talk about movies and television shows on my drive to work. Today, I am going to be talking about Terminator Salvation, the fourth, and at the time of recording, most recent installment of the Terminator franchise. This movie came out in 2009. Which I'm recording this 5 years after it was released, and it is very different from its predecessors. For starters, probably the most glaring thing that is different is that Arnold Schwarzenegger is not a part of this film. He headlined the other three movies. They made a big deal about it. It's Schwarzenegger, come see the Schwarzenegger movie. Also, there are other characters, and it has to do with the Terminator. It's Schwarzenegger. But this movie does not headline Schwarzenegger. He's not a selling point because, you can't use him as a selling point. So that is definitely something. And by the way, of course, Schwarzenegger was otherwise occupied at the time of this, being the governor of California. So he was a very busy man. He was the governor. That joke never gets old for me, but it's probably old for you already, so I apologize for that. This movie is different in a number of ways. If you recall, by the way, I have decided when I'm recording these that I'm going to try very hard not to spoil any major plot events about the movie I am recording, but it's very difficult to not spoil plot events from previous movies. So I'm just going to tell you flat out, end of Terminator 3. So if you haven't seen Terminator 3, change that dial and come back when you've seen it. It's a good movie. You should watch it anyway. End of Terminator 3, Judgment Day happens. Skynet has taken over the world defense grid. Bad things have happened. John Connor and Kate Brewster have survived thanks to some machinations at the end of at the end of Terminator 3, and humanity is now fighting a war to prevent the robot apocalypse, or to prevent the continuation of the robot apocalypse, I suppose. We open, while the vast majority of this film, it takes place in the future. The future for these guys is 2018. 9 years after the release date of the movie. I don't know what they were thinking, but I think they were just attempting to stick to the continuity of the previous Terminator films. This movie, for the vast majority of it, takes place in the future during this robot apocalypse. But we do start with we see this guy. We don't really know what he's about. We know he's a criminal. He's being put into this program. Not really sure what's going on, and they do take their sweet time explaining it. One of the movie's flaws, by the way. But anyway, we then cut to the future, where we have John Connor, played by Christian Bale this time around. Interesting choice. It's interesting. And then Christian Bale comes, and now here is where I don't know if I'm misreading things that happened in the previous Terminator movies. I have only seen them once, so I may have missed something, but my understanding of it was post-Terminator 3, John Connor is the leader of the human resistance movement, just by virtue of circumstance and by the fact that people have tried very hard to make this future come true. However, he is not in charge here. He is a man of responsibility. He certainly has say, but there's a stereotypical grizzled army general who appears to have the ability to outrank him, and at least one person can outrank him. So he's not the leader. He's just a guy right now. So he's going on. He's fighting some bad guys. Stereotypical. He goes in with a bunch of essentially nameless soldiers, and he goes off, gets lucky, the rest of them get killed, all kinds of fun stuff, and boom, he runs into this guy from the past who has no idea why he's here or what he's doing. So anyway, they escape, they get back to the human resistance movement, and then really, just a bunch of stuff happens. A good hunk of this movie just seems a little bit like it's filling time. The ending is kind of cool, but and I can't really get into it. And honestly, it's forgettable enough that I don't really remember all of it. By the way, you're getting this a lot. I'll be doing in the future. I will be doing more movies that I'm much more familiar with. Movies I've seen more than once. Movies that are some of my favorite films, and you'll get a lot more detail on this. But honestly, this is not one of those movies. This is just one that a bunch of stuff happens to a guy, and at the end, there's an ending. I don't know. It didn't grab me. There is a cool little twist at the end. There's a nice little sort of surprise. Oh my goodness! I can't believe that was the thing. Standard fight with the Terminator that we've seen in all the films, and of course high stakes. But the story is a little bit on the generic side. Not as there are plenty of other films that have much more generic plots, but here it's on the generic side, so just watch out for that. All right, that's sort of the story. I will talk about acting here a little bit, although I'm just thinking right now, I don't think there are any actors that are brought in from other Terminator films. Everyone is played by a different actor. Yep, pretty sure. Christian Bale is our John Connor. I'm not a fanboy of Christian Bale's. I think he did a reasonably good job with the Batman character from the Christopher Nolan Batman series. I have seen him do good work. He's certainly got some talent there, and I think he does his absolute very best to bring that talent here. But I think he's hampered by the fact that this is a fourth installment. They've changed directors a lot. And the film isn't nearly as tight as its predecessors. So there is that. Our second lead is Sam Worthington, who he's the guy who's brought in from the future. Interestingly, both Christian Bale and Sam Worthington, non-American actors that have been brought in to play Americans. So they're both putting on their best fake accents. Christian Bale's fake accent is pretty good. Sam Worthington's fake accent needs work. He slips into his Aussie accent a little bit. It's only there if you're actually really focusing on it, but he does slip into his Aussie accent a little bit there. So in terms of his acting, again, he's okay. I think Sam Worthington got a little lucky with some of the roles he landed around this time, the late 2000s. His biggest hit obviously was Avatar, and then he also appeared in the film Clash of the Titans. He's definitely, he is trying his hardest here, but I don't think he's quite found his niche. Anyway, I don't want to complain too much because acting is hard, and Sam Worthington is obviously a better actor than me, so there is that. The rest of the cast is filled out with a bunch of randoms, honestly. A few names that you might recognize. I will talk about this. One that jumps out at me, a very, very talented actress who I will watch in anything, and does a good job here. She doesn't have a very big role. But Helena Bonham Carter plays this kind of government person that recruits Sam Worthington. She also shows up towards the end of the film. Really, really good job. It's a very small role, but man, is she good. Oh, I tell you, I will say this very quickly now, just because I've been hitting a lot of traffic and need to make sure I'm filling time. I've hit almost every red light on the way here. British acting is so good. They're all trained. They're all trained on Shakespeare and the greats and all that. So they study and they put in the work to be good actors, and then they branch out into film, television, other media, as well as doing standard plays. But oh baby, our British acting. British acting is, I find, of extremely high quality, and I really, really enjoy seeing a classically trained British actor. brings something to a role. It really helps me, and Helena Bonham Carter is no exception. She is absolutely wonderful. So that's a big part of the acting of this movie is Helena Bonham Carter, in my personal opinion. There are a few others, but generally speaking, I think it's who plays Kate Brewster? Bryce Dallas Howard, I believe. Again, it's such a small role that it doesn't matter that much. There are a few other roles, other resistance leaders, and this is, I guess I'll get to my complaints with the film now. This film just has a generic feel to it. This is the shortest turnaround of any Terminator movie. Terminator 3 comes out in 2003, Terminator 4 comes out in 2009. That's only 6 years, which for Terminator is a lot. So there is that. There's also, I don't care as much about the characters. I mean, I know you've set up John Connor, but I don't care about anyone else. And I think they try very hard to do that, and it ultimately falls flat. It's set in the future where all the other Terminator films have been brought to whatever the present day at the time was. So that's a little bit different. It feels more like a little bit more hard science fiction, which I like, by the way, but that's not what the franchise has set it up to. We do see the character of Kyle Reese played again by a different actor, by Anton Yelchin, actually. And he brings something to the role, but again, it's not as important. There is some causality stuff that is mentioned. By the way, nothing actually happens in terms of the time travel, which I will say they are very good at keeping that together. But in general, it's the most forgettable of the Terminator films. If you saw Terminator 3 and thought that there were some cracks in the armor, which I very much enjoyed Terminator 3, by the way, if you've heard my review of Terminator 3. But there are some, this film is a significant dip in quality over the other ones. I don't think it's as awful as everyone makes it out to. It will entertain you to a certain extent, but it does not match the level of the other films in the Terminator franchise. Now, at the time of recording, it's 2014. I have seen that there is a Terminator 5 or another Terminator film coming out, and from what I can gather, and you all in the future may be laughing at me because this may not be the case, but there is another Terminator film planned, and I believe it is going to be a reboot, which is probably a good idea because building off Terminator 4 probably not the best foundation to continue to build a franchise on. And let's face it, there are some films, which I will not mention today because they absolutely deserve their own podcast. There are some films that reboot too fast. This is not one of them. If you reboot your franchise 31 years after the first film came out, you are allowed to do so. There are other films that did not take the time. That said, there is an entertaining quality to Terminator 4. It is not a bad movie. I merely think it is a movie that has some flaws, definitely. But, every movie has its flaws. So, I will say that about that. Sorry, I'm just trying not to run over people in the parking lot at work here. All right, so Terminator 4, I give it 3 out of 5 stars. There is some interesting story stuff that you can watch, but if you saw Terminator 3 and feel like that's a good place to end the franchise, I would not begrudge you doing that. You can stop if you want. I see I did hit quite a bit of traffic. I'm a couple minutes longer than normal. Anyway, I'm at work. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll talk to you guys next time.